In today's video, yet another weekly condo market update. We're gonna go through some condo numbers for downtown, midtown, North York by bedroom number, and some more. Let's get to it. Hello everyone, this is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate and Remax Realtron Realty Inc. As always, back with another video for you guys here today. You can find my contact information in the description box with regards to my Gmail, my Instagram, and my office. Feel free to get in touch with me with any questions you may have. If any questions arise during this video, if you have any other questions with regards to other topics discussed in the past, or if you have any general inquiries whatsoever, once again, you can find my contact info in the description. And lastly, feel free to subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Your support in that regard is greatly appreciated, but obviously you're not obliged to do so whatsoever. Feel free not to subscribe whatsoever or like the video. In fact, feel free to even dislike the video if you disagree with me. Anyways, let's get to the point of today's video, which is a weekly condo market update. In this edition, it's going to be a heavy numbers edition. Sometimes I go through a lot of numbers, sometimes I don't really go through a lot of numbers, more so talk about macro trends and news. In today's edition, we're going to talk about a lot of numbers, so let's get to it. I thought we would take a look at the condo market in the city of Toronto so far into the fall market, which is only 30 days into September, and compare it to some August and July prices, basically seeing how it's faring as compared to the summer market or the tail end of the summer market. So starting with downtown Toronto, which I've designated as C1 and C8. When we look at the average sold price so far into September, and keep in mind, these are just for condominium apartments, not condominium townhomes, we see an average sold price of $808,000, which represents a marginal 1.73% increase in average sold price. When we compare it to August, we average sold price of $794,000. Now, this is just C1 and C8. Portions of C2 are technically downtown, but when people talk about downtown, most people envision C1 and C8. But that's not just it for downtown numbers. Later in the video, and as always, there's timestamps available to you. You can feel free to zip around as you please. I'll talk about downtown condo prices by bedroom number. But moving on for now to North York. Let's take a look at North York. We saw an increase with downtown. How did North York fare in September, at least so far into the fall market compared to the summer market, August? When we look at North York, which I designated as C6, C7, C14, C15, we see obviously when compared to downtown, a far cheaper average sold price, but the average sold price in September, in other words, put so far into the fall market, has been $672,000. Once again, across all these areas, which I've designated as North York. Quite conversely, this represents a 1% decrease, whereas in downtown, we saw a 1% increase. This represents a 1% decrease from the price of $679,000 in North York in terms of the Toronto condo market in the month of August. So why is North York down but downtown is up? Well, I had a sneaking suspicion that the reason North York is down, that C15 and C6 are carrying down the averages. In this case, more so C15. And the reason I had this sneaky suspicion is because I currently have a buyer that's looking in C7, and I'm looking at the numbers every day to be very much so in tune with the trends in C7. And I saw just C7 numbers, prices have gone up. So I thought, you know what, let me look at North York just as C7 and C14 and put aside C15 and C6. So now we're gonna look at North York, central North York. We're no longer gonna include the numbers of C15 and C6 to see if it's really C15 that's carrying down the prices. And after all, once again, let me preface, this is not a gigantic drop by any means. It's just a 1% drop, right? However, pushing forward, when we look at C7 and C14, so just central North York, devoid of C15 and C6, we see that prices are actually up. Wherein so far into the fall market for these areas, so central North York, we're dealing with an average sold price of $687,000, up 1% from the sold price in August. The average sold price in August, that was at $680,000. So clearly now we can see that yes, it is the case that C6 and C15 are carrying down the averages for North York, because when we look at central North York, without these two areas, prices are up, but altogether prices are down. because when we look at just C7, C14, prices are up, but when we include 15 and 6, then we see a drop in prices as represented by the numbers. And I would have to say that I'm not the biggest fan of C15. What exists in C15, especially by Shepherd and let's say Don Mills and Shepherd and Leslie, is just far too much mediocre inventory. And don't get me wrong, you can find a good deal that can appreciate from the investor's perspective or from an end user's perspective. You're gonna have a little bit of a harder time finding something good there, at least in my professional opinion. So this is not to say we have to completely ignore C15 from both an investor and end user's perspective, but let's just say I'm not necessarily the biggest fan, especially when we're talking about from the end user's perspective. Now, before we get into condo prices by bedroom number for downtown Toronto, which you can feel free to skip forward to that part, let's look at Midtown quickly. I had a longer video on Midtown, but if we look at Midtown thus far into the fall market, so pretty much September, we see an average sold price of $795,000, which is 1% up. We're dealing with a lot in the 1% range here. To be specific, an increase of 1.31% from August, wherein in August we were looking at an average sold price of $785,000. For Midtown, I have designated C3 and C10. So what we see here is the condo market up in most cases, but very marginally so. And thus far into the fall market, you can ask most people out there, this rate of 1%, obviously only specific to these areas, and we're looking at averages, right? We're not looking at median, but in most instances, when I looked at the medians were actually quite close, within 5K to 4K to the averages, meaning that the averages in this instance are actually pretty accurate. You don't have any outliers at the bottom or the top of the data range that are throwing off the averages, right? So in terms of averages, just in these areas, is still a growth. It is under most people's projections, including mine as well. Anyways, now let's move on to downtown Toronto condos that we already touched on at general, but when we touched on it previously in this video, it was across all bedroom numbers. Now we're gonna break down downtown Toronto condo prices according to the Downtown Toronto Condo market by bedroom number. When we look at the prices so far in September compared to August prices and July prices by bedroom number, so we're only looking at 1 bedroom, 1+1, 2 bedroom. We're not looking at 3 bedrooms or 2+1s, right? Those are excluded for the sake of a shorter video. Nonetheless, when we look at 1 bedrooms, and I'm gonna put all the numbers up on the screen at the same time here so we can go through it together. If you take note, when we look at 1 bedrooms and 1+1s, from July to August, so towards the tail ends of the summer market, quote unquote, because it's the tail end of the summer. When we're going to August, it's the last month. Both property types in downtown Toronto, which once again were designated in C1 and C8 as we did before, saw their biggest jumps then, right? So for instance, with 1 bedroom, we went from 564 to 598, and with 1+1s, we went from 700 to 733. Whereas from July to August, the jump with 2 bedrooms in downtown Toronto was much more tempered, right? It was by a factor of $9,000 to $11,000, which is still quite noticeable, but when compared to the jumps of 1 and 1+1s, it's less so, right? Going from $847,000 to $858,000. Now going from August to September, it's the reverse. In the case of 1 bedrooms, it's only a negligible increase, so by a factor of $4,000, wherein the average sold price in September thus far in the fall market is at $602, an increase from $598. And in the case of 1+1s, it's actually dipped. We're down to $713,000. However, with 2 bedrooms, we see a huge jump in prices, up to $952,000. Now, the thing with 2 bedrooms here is that this 952 is not the most accurate number because you do have outliers in terms of, penthouses and a lot of higher end luxury units that are 2 bedrooms carrying up the average. 952 is not the most fair representation of the market trend. Nonetheless, if we move those outliers, we will still see an increase. But nonetheless, if we remove those outliers that are selling in the millions and their penthouses and their luxury units that are 2 bedrooms, because you'd be surprised, a lot of pricey units downtown are still 2 bedrooms. It's just they're bigger 2 bedrooms, right? The point here is, although this 952 is not the best representation of what's happening, we still see a jump if we were to remove these outliers that are carrying up the average. From the buyer's perspective, I'll probably have to say if you're in the market in downtown Toronto for a 2 bedroom condominium, take your time. Take your time. If a good deal comes by, if your good deal comes by and you find a unit that's right for you and you do your numbers and you know how much it should go for and you can afford it, it's in your budget, sure, go for it. If you potentially wait until the end of September, early November to December, we should see a little bit of a come down here from 2 bedrooms because this is far too much of an increase, even including the outlier scenario. Whereas for 1+1s and 1 bedrooms, specifically 1+1s, where before in the summer market, this is actually, I have to toot my own horn right now, I did project that 1+1s would be more in demand, and the increase we saw in August, I did predict, so I'm happy about that. But now we're seeing the other end of the curve. We're seeing it calm down a bit. A lot of the 1+1s that I personally thought would be in demand and would be bought up, and other people as well said as much, a lot of that purchasing occurred. That's why the prices jumped, mostly in the Church Yonge and Bay Street corridor. Now things are calming down a bit. And we see also that represented in Church Yonge and Bay Street corridor as well. So right now, it would be a good time for you to be in the market for 1+1s. You can still wait until December, November. At the end of the day, case by case basis, purchase the right unit at the right time for you with a professional, or if you are very much so savvy on real estate. As generally speaking though, right now will be a good time for the buyer to strike for a 1+1 unit if you find the right unit. Anyways, that's Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate and Remax Realtron Realty. Let me know if you have any further questions about anything discussed in this video or anything in previous videos, or if you have any comments, any interesting comments. By next week, you can expect a Toronto Q&A. I know a lot of you have asked your questions. I'm gonna answer your questions in the Toronto Q&A. And yes, more to come. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe, comment, rate, and review. And I really, as always, truly appreciate. So it really, truly means a lot for you to give me your time of the day. And I really mean that. So thank you very much for watching. Stay safe and stay tuned. Thank you.